Sometimes all you need in order to establish a great character and a great story is one amazing scene. Or in this case, one really bad joke establishing the character of Scott Calvin in The Santa Claus. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Today with a special holiday look at The Santa Claus with Tim Allen because, well, it's Christmas time and we gotta bring a little bit more Christmas cheer here to YouTube.
We're getting the Disney Channel now. Merry Christmas. Oof, easy, Rudolph.
Now, if you haven't yet seen The Santa Claus, what on earth are you doing? Go get yourself a copy, preferably a VHS copy of this movie, so that way you can better understand the scene that we'll be diving into with this video. But if you want some spoilers, or if you need a quick recap, it's pretty simple. Scott Calvin is a divorced father who is working in the grueling industry of advertising. And it is his weekend to take care of his son Charlie. His wife Laura is running off for some fun Christmas joy with her husband Neil. Charlie does want to spend some time with them because, well, Dad really isn't the best. And we'll definitely get a little bit more into that here real soon. However, Scott and his son Charlie have some pretty fantastic adventures when, lo and behold, Santa turns out to be real. Scott accidentally spooks him off of the roof, killing Santa, and he accidentally picks up the card and the suit that allows him to become the next Santa Claus. Thus begins an incredible adventure of redemption for Scott as he learns to be a better man and to rediscover the magic and hope of Christmas, as well as to try to save his relationship with his son Charlie and to make good with Laura and with Neil, whom he has really badmouthed earlier on in the movie. This is a great magical adventure for a character who at first were like, I don't really like this guy, and by the end you're just like, yes, Santa, I believe in you! This is a truly fun, great Christmas story with all of the wonderful feels that comes with a good holiday movie. However, at the beginning of the movie, that's not exactly what we are given. We are given glimpses into Scott Calvin's life where we realize this guy is a Class A jerk. Yes, he does love his son Charlie, and there's a redeeming factor, and he wants Charlie to continue to believe in Santa, in part to push back against his ex-wife and her new husband because he doesn't quite like how they're raising his son, but also because deep down he realizes that believing in something good and wholesome like Santa will help to make a kid's life just so much better, so much more magical, so much more hopeful, which is something that Charlie definitely needs. The realities of the world are kind of closing in around him, and Charlie's very clearly a kid who's caught in the middle of a very bitter divorce. And at least Scott is trying to look out for his son, even if he may not be the best father. So you gotta give him kudos for that. But at the beginning of the movie, we get one moment that really well solidifies just how much of a jerk Scott is, and it's done with a fantastically dirty joke.
1-800-SPANK-ME. I know that number.
Now, there is a really funny story that we should probably touch on first to explain why this scene was removed, because no, this wasn't just Disney being all chopping happy or like, we must remove everything from any movie and every show that we've ever done that could be considered offensive. No, this actually goes pretty far back, when a granny took her grandkids to go see this movie. Afterwards, the children were like, Grandma, can we please call 1-800-SPANK-ME? And the grandma's like, yeah, sure thing, little Timmy, little Jimmy, little Molly. You go ahead and you call that number. Grandma, come on, you should know better than that. I mean, I thought that my grandma was a really naive woman. Lo and behold, come to find out she had a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. So I do not believe that any grandmother should have been that ignorant of the fact that a hotline like this actually exists, 1-800-SPANK-ME. The kids called and were suddenly on a naughty line, which actually did tell them if you are under 18, hang up or call another number and you'll have something fun that you can go and talk to. So Grandma got really upset, contacted Disney, and the joke was removed. However, this is a joke that honestly deserves and needs to be in this scene because it allows the scene to punch hard and truly deliver that Scott Calvin is not just some grouch or some Scrooge on Christmas. No, he's a jerk.
How come your clothes are so baggy?
Because Santa is watching his saturated fats.
You killed him.
Did not.
How come you don't have a beard?
Because I shaved. Whoa. This guy was huge. Do you want this doll or not? Go back to sleep.
What did it feel like, Dad?
It felt like America's Most Wanted.
And I am just about this close to taking all those presents back to the chimney with me.
You're supposed to drink the milk.
Supposed to drink that milk.
So consider this, it's Christmas. Scott should be focused on making this the best night possible for his son Charlie, who again, he wants Charlie to actually have some belief in Santa Claus. Enjoy the Christmas season. Don't think of it so analytically or logically. Just enjoy being a kid, and be a good kid at that. If that's the message, though, that he wishes to impart upon his son Charlie, he's doing it in absolutely the wrong way while he's having an audible fight with the mom. Charlie can hear all of this, and when he receives the number for Grandma, he's like, oh, 1-800-SPANK-ME. I know that number. Charlie might not realize that that's a naughty hotline to call, but as a kid, he should at least know what the implications of spanking are, that it's something bad. It's a negative thing. And so he's like, oh my gosh, you're referring to Grandma in a negative way? Charlie then does not want to stay with his father. He wants to stay with his mother. And Scott, you can tell, is like, oh my gosh, I am regretting this. Scott at least has enough of a conscience to realize that this was bad form. But the damage has been done. He's a man who is crass enough to make a comment or a joke like this while his son is within earshot, and he's a guy who is willing to snap back at other people when he's not obviously getting his way or when he's upset. What this actually does is not only does this set up Scott as a bit of a bad guy, as a jerk, who has a very confrontational relationship with his son, which is built upon as the scene expands and molds on over into the next one, but also this helps to establish that this is a guy who later on, when he's up at the North Pole with all the elves, he's absolutely the kind of dude who would tell the elves to his face, what if I choose not to believe any of this? What if I choose to not be Santa Claus? What if Christmas ends with me because I don't want this? And all the elves are shocked because obviously that's a horrible idea. It would destroy what Christmas is. If there wasn't Santa, if there wasn't a paragon of goodness to uphold the hope and faith of children all over the world. And Scott Calvin is a guy who at that time, at the beginning of the movie, could absolutely, if he felt necessary, would turn his back on Christmas. And that is actually what makes then Scott, as Santa, such a great character later on as he becomes redeemed. Because it is thanks to his relationship with Charlie, his desire for Charlie to be happy, his desire for Charlie to believe in Christmas and enjoy his life as a kid, that he's willing to make some sacrifices and some really big changes. And you get that dichotomy, you get that nuance for his character thanks to this scene. True, it still all works, even without the joke, but the joke, aside from being funny, the joke firmly establishes him as a jerk. Now, why does that really matter? It matters because The Santa Claus is a story about redemption for the man who becomes Santa. Because by the end of the movie, his son believes in him, and he wants the absolute best for his son, even if that means giving his son completely on over to his ex-wife, because that's just the right thing to do. And on top of that, he also gives now the presents that his wife and her new husband Neil had always wanted as kids that they didn't get, and that caused them to stop believing in Santa. He gives that to them. He is willing to fix all of the burned bridges. He's willing to make amends. He's willing to step away from the cutthroat world of corporatism and advertising and really begin to focus on the people. Where he was a jerk to all of these kids and families the first night he was Santa, he becomes the loving paragon of goodness and of charity to everyone that he comes across. And he is so nice to the little girl who gave him skim milk because he said that he was watching his saturated fats. It's great because he would never have been this guy in the beginning. The crass joke tells us that. But it's the adventure that he goes on with his son, the love that he has for his son, and how he relearns the true meaning of Christmas through his experiences that allows him to become a better person. Yeah, sure, he's not exactly the best Santa that you could possibly ever want, but he's learning to become the man that he needs to be. Again, that paragon of hope and goodness. And that is so critical, it's so central to the story of the Santa Claus. Now then, while Disney removing this joke does not ruin the movie, again, it just removes some of the oomph. It removes some of that darker aspect to his character that makes his redemption so much more meaningful and so much more impactful, as well as it just takes away just a really funny moments. I mean, yes, they did add in 1-800-POUND, and it should be pound me, haha.
I'm gonna deck your halls, bub.
It still just doesn't have the same kind of weight. Now then, what should we take away as writers from this particular moment? I would say this: do not hinge your entire character on one scene or on one joke, especially a crass joke. However, this is something for you to consider. For some of the scenes, for some of the dialogue, for some of the jokes, or for some of the big emotional moments that you intend for your characters, just really, what do they mean? What do they say about the characters that you are writing? And what would happen if you removed that scene? And this is actually something very critical to think about, because sometimes we're so wedded to certain scenes or certain bits of dialogue for our characters. They're like, oh, I love it so much. But could you remove it and still have your character and still have their journey? That if the answer is yes, then that's a darling that you might need to kill when it comes time to edit. Otherwise, if you're like, no, it absolutely does need to stay in there, then you got to make sure that you defend that moment throughout your story. Because sometimes authors, and I will say I am one of them, sometimes we come up with some really crazy scenes or some scenes that people are like, I don't feel too comfortable with this. And you do have to ask yourself, do I really need this in there? Because sometimes an uncomfortable scene that's just there for the shock value probably should be taken out. However, if it's a scene that you say, no, this is really critical, that's when you then talk with other people and you find out how to make this scene truly work. And honestly, for the Santa Claus, 1-800-SPANK-ME works, and it didn't need to be removed. Grandma just should have made sure to tell her kids there are certain phone numbers that you shouldn't call, because if you do call them, you'll get in trouble. And these little kids would be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in trouble, and they wouldn't have called. And if they did call, they then realize, oh, that's a naughty number, he. They'll tell their friends at school about it, and then they'll all get in trouble. The consequences would have flowed naturally, Granny. You didn't need to encourage Disney to censor themselves over this. In any case, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you all, and the best of writing to all of you, my fellow novice authors. Again, make sure that you're taking time to go over all the scenes that you've been crafting, and honestly think about what role they play within your story, and if it's really necessary. And if so, then make sure that you defend that scene throughout your story by making it relevant. Otherwise, why is it in there? It might be a darling that you have to axe. So, with all of that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this little look at a particular scene from the Santa Claus. Again, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you watch this movie because it is great. And if you're looking for other great stories to check out, you can check out some of the books that I have published. Links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, ho ho ho, and tschüss.